If you're someone considering an electric motorcycle, you're probably aware that, unlike electric cars, there's very much a split market in terms of what you can buy for your money. At one end, you have high-end, high-performance, full-size, highway-capable electric motorcycles from companies like Zero Motorcycles, Energica, and more recently, Harley-Davidson. These are motorcycles that accelerate like regular motorcycles, have bucket loads of power, and can be well above the speed limit in the time it takes you to go from here to here. Sadly, that high performance does come with a high price tag. Want a highway electric capable motorcycle with the acceleration capabilities of a half-litre bike or bigger, and you're gonna be spending more than you would buying a half-decent used electric car, or maybe even in some cases a brand new one. And that puts a lot of people off buying an electric motorcycle altogether. At the other end of the spectrum, you have less able two-wheelers. Some are sold as motorcycles, while others are sold as low-powered mopeds. They're not bicycles and they don't look like bicycles, but they have limited top speeds and limited performance. And because they are a lot more affordable in terms of overall price and entry point, some people who want to get an electric vehicle may find themselves looking seriously at a lower powered two-wheeler instead. But are they safe? It's a question that I've been noodling on for a while, and while I don't think I have a clear-cut answer, I felt it was time to address some of these two-wheelers in a video on this channel. And I think the answer comes down to 4 things: your skill as a rider, where you want to ride, the power level of the bike, and most interestingly, how the bike looks. First, let's acknowledge that mopeds have, for a long time, been criticised by motorcyclists as being underpowered and dangerous, regardless of what powers them. And I'm going to admit that many of the arguments against mopeds in general holds true to electric mopeds too. And if you ask me to choose between a motorbike and a moped, I'm always going to go with a motorbike. Before I go further, let's clarify what I mean by mopeds. They are, for the most part, vehicles limited in their power output to anything less than 50 cc's of engine power and have a limited top speed, usually somewhere between 30 and 50 kilometers per hour, depending on where you live. In some places in the world, you can ride them without a license or insurance, and in other parts of the world, you will need both. It's up to you to check. Note as well that we shouldn't confuse scooters with electric bicycles, which combine the power of your legs with an electric motor. Sometimes called pedelec bikes, these may or may not have a power limit depending on where you live, but they require you to put in effort too by pedaling. A good example of this, the Rad City power bike I reviewed earlier this year, the review for which you can see here. And unlike the old pedal mopeds of old, which required pedals to get the engine running, today's modern electric mopeds do not have pedals that you need to turn because you don't have an engine to start. In an electric vehicle guise, electric mopeds usually have a pretty small motor and a battery pack, meaning that while they're not as light as a comparable gasoline moped, can often be a lot easier to handle off-bike at low speed than a full-sized electric motorcycle. How safe are they in reality? Well, like I said, that depends on the rider and where they're ridden. If they're piloted by someone who is a half-decent rider who understands the limitations in terms of power and speed, then they probably aren't a whole lot more risky than a motorcycle. But if they're ridden by someone who doesn't understand the limitations, they can get themselves and their riders in serious problems, especially if ridden somewhere inappropriate, like a busy street with a very high speed limit. For round-town travel though, as I discovered a year or so ago when I borrowed a scoot for a day in San Francisco, they are great. They can be the quickest way to get around, and they can be pretty fun too, if you know how to avoid all the potholes. The caveat here with mopeds though, make sure the one you ride actually delivers the power you need. You should steer completely clear of anything that delivers less than 2 kilowatts. And I really mean it. Look, a 50cc gasoline moped puts out somewhere between 2 and 3 kilowatts of power, so you should treat that as an absolute bare limit for an electric moped. No 800-watt jobs. Anything less, you're gonna be a danger to yourself and others because you will lack the extra power you need to get yourself out of trouble. If your commute involves low-speed streets and you're good with 2 wheels, a scooter is a great, or rather It is great if you are in a place where scooters are fairly common and you ride defensively and you wear good gear. All of these things will help you, but so too will the scooter you ride, which brings me to the type and style of the scooter. You see, low-power scooters that look like traditional low-powered scooters are generally, I think, a little more safer than scooters and low-speed motorcycles that look like larger, more powerful ones. Why? Because when we humans are behind the wheel of a vehicle, we make a judgment call about other road users, especially those on two wheels, and we try and figure out what they're capable of doing. If you are riding something that looks like it can top out above the legal speed limit, and it's actually terribly underpowered, you're likely to get yourself into trouble really quickly. Low-speed mopeds are pretty easy to spot, and like their gasoline-powered counterparts, let drivers know that they may be a little slow up that big hill or might need to take a little extra time to maneuver. A motorcycle, meanwhile, that looks like it can drive like it can go super fast, but it can't, is a big safety risk as it behaves differently to how other road users expect it to. And that can cause problems on the road because road users expect full-size motorcycles to behave completely differently to a scooter. So what am I saying? Well, simply put, I'm personally more comfortable with someone riding a well-made moped with a power output of between 3 kilowatts and say 8 kilowatts than I am someone riding a motorcycle look-alike with a power output of 4 or 5 kilowatts. Why? Well, in order to compete with something like a 125cc motorcycle, you're going to need something that has a motor power output of at least 10 or maybe even 12 kilowatts. And unless you live in a country where 125cc scooters and mopeds are common because of learner restrictions like some parts of Europe, you probably won't consider a gasoline motorcycle with such a low power output. So you wouldn't want to do the same with an electric motorbike. I should note too that in some places, like New Zealand for example, the legal power output of what your scooter and low-powered motorcycle has and what you can ride depends on the theoretical power output of the motor and the controller and the battery pack, not just the rated power of the motor itself. So check with your local authorities to be sure. Electric mopeds and low-speed motorcycles are a great way into the electric vehicle world, and they are often cheaper than a full electric car or a high-speed electric motorbike. But just make sure what you buy has the power you need to stay safe and doesn't get mistaken by other road users for something it's not. Oh, and always wear full gear. That's it. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.